From singing duets with her grandfather as a small child to being the woman who made rock and roll history, Stevie Nicks has lived a musical story like no other. Beneath the lace shawls and ethereal voice are stories of erratic exits, serendipitous meetings, tragic losses, and towering victories. Her odyssey leads us from discovering music as a sanctuary to meeting Lindsey Buckingham, joining Fleetwood Mac, and effortlessly topping the charts, to fighting battles with fame and addiction. Along the way, it was family, love, and pure grit that kept her on her feet. This is the story of Stevie Nicks, a mystical, unbroken, and forever unforgettable figure. A Star is Born. Stevie Nicks was born the 26th of May, 1948, in Phoenix, Arizona, to the couple Mrs. Barbara Nicks and Mr. Jess Nicks. Her family was at the center of all creation since the birth of this girl. She was having an early visualization of her talent by her grandfather, Aaron Nicks, who was a country artist and musician. He sang ancient songs to both her and coerced her to sing with him and duets. This affection dropped the original germs of acting in her youthful heart. The profession of her father meant that the family had to change location to different states several times in her childhood. Every action made her feel like a stranger, yet music is what made her stay all the time. As other children were making new friends and starting new friendships in new schools, Stevie was mostly left on her own and resorted to music to feel better. Her mother and father, on their part, worked on her talent. The family would buy records and continue to stage dreams, although it was not clear whether she would succeed at that point. Her exposure to the music of the 60s, folk and rock, profoundly affected Stevie by the time she became a teenager. She used to have a late night, writing poetry and singing into the night. She sang very sweetly but uniquely, and that grit brought with her voice, which was unusual in others of her age. Family remained her anchor. Not only did Jess Nicks struggle vigorously to provide, but he also thought that his daughter had star power. Barbara cultivated her soul and self-sufficiency, whereby she was taught to follow her gut feelings. These personal connections, together with the early teaching of her grandfather, gave the young artist the groundwork for a great artist. Stevie Nicks already had her family support and her own flame even before gaining fame. She was about to embark on a trip that would transform the definition of rock music indefinitely. The Restless Childhood. The childhood of Stevie was a life full of change. Her father, the late Jess Nicks, was also a food executive with the Greyhounds and then with the food industry. He was promoted a lot, and this meant that the family had to travel and relocate, Stevie continuously among different cities. Even though this was consoling as far as security was concerned, it also meant that she never remained someplace long enough to identify as settled. This could have been overwhelming to many children who were being transferred so frequently. To Stevie, it was the scene of her inner world. Every step was an opportunity to take her own tempo, music. She also started to rely not on her friends, but on the rhythms in her head. The guitar, the turntable, and her notebooks that had words became her closest friends. Music was also her rope as the world continued to shake under her feet. She heard folk singers and learned their histories. She learned harmonies and could sing much of the time in her room. This withdrawn, interiorizing tendency caused her to be a contemplative person, which prefigured the mystic, intimate lyrics on which she later drew strength. Her parents understood this need for balance. Her mother, Barbara, repeatedly told her that it was not that she was lonely, but that she was a refuge of power. Jess witnessed the blaze in his daughter and welcomed her to adhere to her creativity. At a time when many families were tradition-based families, the Nicks household placed a strong emphasis on her music passion. These were not peaceful years, and yet Stevie found strength in them. They showed her to fit in, to seek her own voice in silence, and to be able to make her own world out of the sound. Each move made her into a bit more of a piece of art. When adolescence set in, she was no longer an ordinary girl who loved music. She was weaving her life into song already, and ready for a destiny she must bear by herself. Finding Lindsey. By the middle of the 1960s, Stevie's life had temporarily settled in California. At the high school in Menlo Atherton, she had a soft, magnetic presence. She was also shy in groups, but when it came to music, she felt confident. Her colleagues could easily observe her posture, which was so soft but sure that she could feel that music was her calling. It's here that fate set her in the proximity of Lindsey Buckingham. Originally, classmates already heard of Lindsey as a highly skilled guitar player with an original style. Stevie has performed on one occasion during a party where he accompanied himself on the California Dreamin' song. They sang together with an unexpected, far more natural synthesis and their combustion. It was this tiny harmonizing moment which gave the first germ, the first seed, of a union that would afterwards make a mark in the history of rock. They were not thick and thin at that. Stevie kept it very small with her, and Lindsey was concentrating on his music. But the recollection of that harmony lingered in both. Several years down the line, when Lindsey was looking for a female singer to play in his band, Fritz, he recalled Stevie's voice. The one decision would bring together their lives over the next few decades. It all carried on during this initial phase in which Stevie also relied on her family members as a source of balance. Her parents loved Lindsey's talent and were willing to see her left in his circle despite doubts over the unreliability of music. It was the first occasion when, in her personal dream, Stevie started to mix with concrete possibilities. The late 60s were a transition period in America, but also in Pextra. She had located a musical counterpart who challenged her in addition to spurring her. She felt that their relationship would last long, but she was still young. In Lindsey, music sounded less like an escape approach and more like a calling of destiny. The Fritz years. The incarceration led Lindsey to his first real musical testing experiences when he invited Stevie to perform with Fritz. The group performed a catalog of ballads and its own original mixes of rock, folk, and blues. Stevie was still a student in her speech communication courses in college, yet she couldn't stop being lured by the stage. Rehearsing at night, performing on weekends, and the drudging of classes and weekend work became the weekday experience. Back on stage, she wore voluminous skirts and low tops, nowhere near her subsequent mysticism. But her presence was always conspicuous. People didn't forget the girl with the scratchy voice or with her lashing honesty. She didn't imitate, instead she twisted the songs as she saw fit to her own key. This presence soon became the power of the group. By 1968, Fritz had amassed a devoted following in the Bay Area, mainly in San Francisco. They did clubs and festivals, and the local scene was full of psychedelic rock. They got their greatest opportunity when they toured with Janis Joplin and also Jimi Hendrix. It was exciting and frightening to Stevie. It's this pure energy as Joplin played her songs on stage that left her dazed, and her fantasies were ignited by the CD that Hendrix performed in front of her. Both had standards that she swore to achieve one day. Life on the road was messy. There was a shortage of money, unreliability of equipment, and exhausting travel. But the closer Stevie and Lindsey became, developing an online-based trust in music, they had to use one another to maintain their existence in the chaos. And this bond was strengthened with each performance. Fritz never got a record deal, but it was not the years wasted. Stevie was taught how to confront an audience, how to write purposefully, and how to have bigger dreams. Fritz retired in 1971, but what Stevie Nicks learned would later propel her to history. Buckingham Nicks. Fritz later ended, and Stevie and Lindsey chose to continue playing. They loaded their equipment, relocated to Los Angeles, and immersed themselves in music. Money was lean, and living survival behavior meant working side jobs. House cleaning and waiting tables followed, and often Stevie was so tired but would decide to write anyway. Lindsey remained guitar-oriented, and Stevie refined her lyrics as she interwove some stories within the songs. Later, they released Buckingham Nicks in 1973, a soft rock record where Lindsey brings harsh arrangements together with the haunting voice of Stevie. The album didn't pick up, thus they were broke and downhearted. Gramophone shops removed it from shelves, radio stations barely touched it, and the bills continued to pile up. Something vital was shaped, nevertheless, in those unspoken contests. Stevie was reading a novel one night about a witch called Rhiannon, and she was scribbling down words after reading it. The song was a mystery of our independence and power. Lindsey constructed a swirling guitar section around it, and Rhiannon was born. It was not a song heard by many people at the time, but as we were to learn later, this was one of Stevie's signature tracks. Stevie was torn through these years. She and her parents, in particular Barbara, were concerned about her future. Friends, it's a wonder that she continued to pursue something so wretchedly unstable. But personal, as well as musical attachment to Lindsey kept her going. They together held the view that a right break will tick. Although the rejection took place, Stevie blossomed into her voice. She was taught to sing in her gut, write more precisely, and rely on her intuition. The world was not quite ready yet, but she was as near as you would like to the stage, which she'd been aspiring to all her life. Secondly, they would not put all hope on shortchanging in their patience until 1974. It's about to change everything because of a chance meeting. Fleetwood Mac's Golden Gamble. By late 1974, Stevie and Lindsey were worn down, still struggling after their album failed. Then fate stepped in. Mick Fleetwood, drummer of Fleetwood Mac, was searching for new members. He heard Lindsey's guitar on a demo tape and asked him to join. Lindsey refused to go without Stevie. That choice changed both of their lives forever. In the early part of 1975, Stevie and Lindsey joined Fleetwood Mac. The band initially had a blues-based sound, but its style evolved with the addition of the new pair. Stevie had her mystical voice and her singing poetry. Lindsey's production ideas and ferocious guitar playing. Together, they gave the band a new identity. Their first album, released under the group's name, was called Fleetwood Mac and became a surprise hit. Rhiannon, by Stevie, hit the charts and became the band's signature song. She moved around on stage, dressed in shawls, her hair down, her eyes closed, and moving like a snake in the mist, lost in a trance. Fans were captivated. Another of Stevie's songs, Landslide, demonstrated a soft side. The lyrics, like her life at the time, explored feelings of change and fear and resonate with listeners to this day. Many years later, it would be one of her most popular songs, sung by a variety of different artists. Life with Fleetwood Mac was a wild ride of a new kind. Fame came quickly, the road was filled with fans, and concerts sold out. Finally, money made it easier for them to put their old hang-ups behind them, but pressure also grew. As for her relationship with Lindsey, Stevie was already having trouble with it, and there was the world of the band balancing her creative demands. Still, her breakthrough came in 1975. From a waitress who was never making ends meet to the singing star of a top-hit band, Stevie had won the gamble of her life. The stage was now hers. Rumours and heartbreak. As of 1977, Fleetwood Mac had become more than just a band. They were celebrities the world over, and behind the glamour lay tumult. Something had gone wrong in Stevie and Lindsey's relationship. Christine and John McVeigh were getting divorced. Mick Fleetwood was concluding a disastrous marriage. They all had heartbreak built into them when they arrived in the studio. The tension, instead of causing them to break each other apart, made their music great. They bottled raw pain in Rumours. Stevie also contributed Dreams, the only hit by the band to make it into the top 10. So her falling out with Lindsey was represented in the song as painfully true. His response was one of huge anger, as expressed in his Go Your Own Way song. Together, the two competing songs became a lovely story of broken relationships. Recording wasn't easy, arguments ensued and tempers flared. Yet in the midst of anarchy, springtide came. Songs of The Chain and Don't Stop were both bitter and hopeful. Heartbreak became art that would strike a chord with millions of people. When Rumours was published in 1977, it became a classic for the first time. Critics raved about it, fans snapped it up, and sales skyrocketed. The album would go on to sell more than 40 million copies worldwide, making it one of the best-selling albums of all time. For Stevie, it was evidence of her power as a writer and performer. On stage, she took pain and not only turned it into magic, but also into an art form. Wrapped in black shawls, spun out beneath the lights, she became an icon. It was offstage, though, where her life was more delicate. The love was gone, trust was shattered, but she still carried herself with grace. By 1978, the band had achieved a high level of fame, but at a personal level, the cost was great. For Stevie, the distinction between music, love, and heartbreak was forever blurred. Solo wings, Belladonna. By the early 80s, Stevie Nicks had already dominated the stage with Fleetwood Mac, but she felt her conscience tugging at something more personal. Stevie had written songs that didn't quite fit the band. The time had arrived to experiment on her own wings. Belladonna, her first solo album to be released in July 1981, was an immediate success. With singles Edge of 17 and her duet with Tom Petty, Stop Dragging My Heart Around, Stevie proved herself to be more. She was just as big a star as Fleetwood Mac's frontwoman. The album was #1 and made her one of the few women to be the #1 star in both a band and as a solo artist. But success came with sorrow. Just around that time, her best friend Robin Snyder Anderson, who had rallied around her dreams from the beginning, was diagnosed with leukemia. Stevie was completely affected by Robin's sickness. When Robin died soon after giving birth, Stevie was grief-stricken, and she would stay with her through the battle. Falling into grief over an unnatural death and wanting to raise Robin's newborn son, Stevie made a decision that sent many people down a slippery slope. She briefly married Robin's widower, Kim Anderson. The marriage only lasted a few months. Stevie has later implied that it was a heartbroken rather than a loved decision. However, once she got on the stage, she looked absolutely immovable. Belladonna sold millions, and shawls, ribbons, and now those signature spinning dances filled her concerts. And inside, she harbored sorrow at losing her best friend. So the world caught sight of a rock goddess blossoming. By 1982, Stevie had struck out on her own as she was Fleetwood Mac's fairy woman and a star all on her own who was bent on building a name for herself. The Wild Heart and Rock a Little. After the success of Belladonna, Stevie Nicks wasted no time in demonstrating that her success was no accident. In 1983, she published The Wild Heart, a passionate record that carried her trademark mystic style. Songs such as Stand Back, which pay homage to Prince, show off her ability to take well-known pop songs and wrap a loud rock aura around them. The album sold millions of copies and established her as one of rock's biggest women. Her image, shawls, black lace, platform boots, and long blonde hair became an image of iconography. Fans copied her iconic style, and newspapers portrayed her as a symbol of mystery and freedom. But behind the curtain, fame came at a cost. Touring, recording, and living in the limelight took their toll. In 1985, Stevie released Rock a Little. She had a hit with another song on this album, Talk to Me, but critics noted that she appeared tired. So fame and endless shows began to crush her. During this time, she increased her cocaine use, which, in addition to the obligations of both Fleetwood Mac and solo projects, brought her to a breaking point. In 1986, doctors warned her that she had a nasal passage that had eroded from heavy drug use. This led her to rehab, the first step toward facing the addiction that shadowed her career. Yet, despite her illness, the fans never abandoned her work. They continued to buy the records and attend shows, still drawn to her raspy voice and haunting lyrics. This chapter revealed the other side of stardom, the glamour of stardom on stage and the quiet drama backstage. Yet Stevie never gave up. She survived, and the flame in her music continued. Tango, Klonopin, and Struggles. By 1987, Stevie Nicks was still sharing her solo career with Fleetwood Mac. That year, the band released Tango in the Night, an album of pop rock staples at their peak. Though Lindsey Buckingham quit shortly after its release, Stevie stayed to tour with the group on grueling schedules. On stage, she was magnetic, spinning, draped in black lace, her voice still raw with power. Off stage, however, she was sinking into even deeper struggles. After coming out of rehab for cocaine, Stevie's doctors gave her Klonopin, a tranquilizer to keep her steady. Rather, it deadened her spirit and stifled her creativity. Much later, she called this drug the worst mistake of her life. It caused her to put on weight, feel foggy, and steal almost 8 years of her sharpest energy. Friends commented on the change, and she herself described herself as a ghost of what she used to be. During this period, she continued publishing works on her own, including The Other Side of the Mirror. The album was lovely at times, such as the singles Rooms on Fire. However, critics felt like she had lost her magic. Eventually, tours continued, but exhaustion and burnout followed her everywhere. As she grew sicker under the burden of fame and medicine, her family only watched as it progressed. Even so, they rallied around her, visiting, supporting her, reminding her that her voice was actually her best gift. By 1990, Stevie had grown so unwell with the situation that she could no longer maintain it. Drug dependency, creative exhaustion, and unrelenting pressures came close to killing her career. Yet at heart, the same grit that had kept her alive since childhood still awaited. She would soon need it more than ever. Rebuilding and reflection. In the early 1990s, Stevie Nicks experienced one of the darkest yet most pivotal periods in her life. For years, under the haze of Klonopin, she finally realized the drug was slowly stealing her life. In 1993, she checked herself into a hospital for a long and painful detox. The process was excruciating, involving weeks of withdrawal, confusion, and emotional strain. Yet she emerged sober, clear-eyed, and determined never to fall into that trap again. Cleared of the fog, she began to look at herself and her music again, as well as her health and her image. Decades of medication had caused severe weight gain, which became a point of cruel public scrutiny. Stevie acknowledged that this was very painful, but she found the strength to stand on stage anyway, proving her voice still mattered more than the appearance. In 1994, she released Street Angel. Though the album wasn't a big commercial success, it was a significant step for her. The songs had themes of survival, honesty, and seeking the light after years of darkness. She went on tour to promote it, though her energy was still rebuilding. Audiences could sense she was healing, even if her performances lacked the fiery edge of earlier years. During this period, Stevie fell entirely on her family for support. Her mother, Barbara, was her lifeline, calling frequently to remind her of the little girl singing with her grandfather. Another joy of her life is her niece and goddaughter, Kelly. This family connection rooted her where fame would feel to reach. By 1996, Stevie was quietly gearing towards something larger. She was not down for long. She was on her feet again, joined by Fleetwood Mac around the corner. The Dance of Renewal. By 1997, Stevie Nicks was at a crossroads. After all the struggles over the years, she finally reconvened with Fleetwood Mac for The Dance. The album and tour were a huge hit. Fans filled stadiums, ready to witness the original lineup once again. For Stevie, it was a rebirth of sorts. She performed Landslide with added complexity, her vocals encompassing years of experienced sorrow and endurance. The reunion was not just about songs. It gave Stevie a sense of belonging that she was missing. Singing with Lindsey Buckingham, all their history aside, gave their stage show raw emotion. The jagged and compelling chemistry between them drew fans in closer than before. Their history was written on their songs, and fans knew it with every show. The late 1990s also found Stevie shifting to solo recordings again. In 1998, she issued Enchanted, a 3-CD box set of her solo career outside of Fleetwood Mac. The set was a reminder that she was an individual member of a great band, but a powerhouse to be dealt with as a solo singer. She persisted, directing her rehabilitative and self-reflective energies into new songs. By 2001, she released Trouble in Shangri-La, her first major solo album in years. It was her big comeback album. Duets with young singers like Sheryl Crow injected youthful enthusiasm into the album while still centering Stevie's vocals throughout it. Critics received her return with praise, and fans with wide-open arms. Throughout these years, she remained close to family, finding strength from her mother and niece. Their encouragement made her feel down to earth while she recovered her career as an artist. By the end of the year 2001, Stevie was rising again, older, wiser, ready for whatever was to come next. Into the new millennium. The new millennium brought Stevie Nicks to a new era of balance between Fleetwood Mac and her solo career. In 2002, she released Say You Will with the band, their first studio album in years. The album didn't compare to Rumours in size, but it showed that the band still had magic between them. Stevie's songs captured her classic mysticism, and her stagecraft was a reminder that she was still the band's spirit. Performing with Say You Will was a high point. Fans filled out stadiums all over the world, demonstrating the lasting popularity of the band. Feuds with Lindsey Buckingham really never went away, but chemistry between them added emotional depth to their performances. It was a reunion and settling of scores for each show. Stevie welcomed the camaraderie while protecting her own tenuous tranquility. Her solo career remained vibrant, too. In 2007, she put out Crystal Visions, the very best of Stevie Nicks. The compilation honored her 4-decade-long career, blending hits with stage performances and hard-to-find songs. The album was accompanied by a tour that was a reminder of all her singular contributions to rock history. While most of her contemporaries vanished over time, Stevie never did. Rather, she continued to carry on her tradition while still breaking new artistic ground. In 2009, she released the Soundstage Sessions, a live album from a televised concert that captured her voice in its raw, worn power. By this time, that once soft voice had developed into a husky, rough sound, but it still held the same intense emotion. Fans adored her frankness. That voice recounted a survivor story. Stevie also depended on her family at these times and was content to spend time with the children of her brother. She combined celebrity with daily living and never let love for family get away from her. In Your Dreams and Beyond. Stevie entered a new decade with renewed spirit in the studio. In 2011, she released In Your Dreams, a record produced in collaboration with Dave Stewart of the Eurythmics. The album was like a personal journal made into a song album. Some songs, like Secret Love, found gentle truths, and others embodied that dreamlike scenery that only she was capable of writing. The album was very close to her house in Los Angeles, where most of the recording was conducted. Documentary footage was made of the album-making process. It caught Stevie in one of her most intimate settings, surrounded by family and old friends, and in the presence of music. Fans did not view her merely as rock royalty, but also saw that she was still a woman with a still open-ended life. The album was received fondly, proving that she was still greater than a nostalgia act. She was still creating work of depth and passion. Her bond with family grew stronger in these years. She wanted her niece, Kelly, to be part of the Moonlight, a vampire's dream video. It wasn't a creative choice alone for Stevie. It was to connect family to her work. Family was something she did not hesitate to talk about to bring people close to her after all those years of instability. Kelly was a warm symbol of love, of continuation, of future generations. Stevie also collaborated with younger artists, showing her ability to bridge eras. Her influence reached beyond her own music, inspiring fresh voices while keeping her own alive. By the end of 2013, she stood not only as a legend, but as a mentor and family matriarch who continued to nurture both music and kin. Timeless Legacy. Stevie released 24 Karat Gold, Songs from the Vault in 2014, a compilation of songs composed many years ago but never recorded before. It was like a connection between her old self and herself, demonstrating that her songs were timeless. Fans favored listening to fragments of herself from when she was young, revitalized with wisdom from the voice of her older self. She made a guest appearance on American Horror Story Coven that same year, playing herself in a guest role. Wearing flowing black attire, she sang to a new generation of fans who learned of her not from the radio but from television. The role brought out her mystique to a newer audience and reminded everyone of her unbeatable stage presence. Stevie did something unique in 2019. She was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for a second time. Previously honored by Fleetwood Mac, she stood alone this time as a solo performer. Stevie became, to that date, the first woman to be inducted twice, earning for herself a place in rock history to be forever remembered as a pioneering rock woman for all times to come. Even in her 70s, Stevie wouldn't slow down. She kept touring, regularly selling out stadiums with crowds of both old fans and newcomers eager to discover why people still adored her. Her stage shows remained the same magic: shawls, boots, and a still emotionally charged voice. Family was close to her heart. Speaking of her brother, of her niece Kelly, and their grounding force upon her, she carried forth her past and future with them and in their songs. Stevie Nicks today is more than just a singer. She's a force of survival, of creativity, of self-sufficiency, a legend still radiating, still singing. If you've watched the video till here, that means you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notifications bell icon